Hey everyone! Welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Settle in, because every intriguing detail is right here, and if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you're following us and sharing the video before we dive deeper. Thank you for being here with us. Around midday, the airport pulsed with that familiar rush, voices colliding under the high ceilings, luggage wheels humming across polished floors, announcements bouncing through the air like a steady drum. Among the crowd filtering back from vacations and quick getaways, two unmistakable figures stepped into the flow at nearly the exact same moment, Erkan Meriç and Hazal Subaşı. Different flights, same arrival window, a coincidence that drew eyes like magnets. They didn't collide, they didn't speak, and yet the electricity of their presence snapped through the terminal like a hushed rumor catching speed. What unfolded felt almost choreographed, but only the kind of choreography that comes from experience, restraint, and the quiet understanding of what it means to be watched. After collecting his suitcase, Erkan lifted his chin with that calm ease he's known for, no rush to smile, no obvious glance around, then he angled his body left, away from the mainstream of departures, and began to move quickly. At nearly the same instant, Hazal, accompanied by her assistant, slipped out of a side corridor with unhurried grace, drifting toward a lesser-used exit as if she had always planned it that way. Two paths on parallel lines, never touching, and yet everyone in the vicinity could feel the story writing itself in real time. Phone shot up. A few whispers grew louder. Did you see? Are those? It didn't take long for social media to pulse with short clips and blurry snapshots of suitcases, caps, sunglasses, and hints of familiar faces. In a matter of minutes, the phrase "two celebrities at the airport" began to trend among fan pages and gossip feeds. Observers noticed the subtle changes in their routes, the way Erkan slipped behind a family with a stroller just as Hazal's assistant redirected her toward a side door few passengers even use. Even the security staff seemed to understand the wordless plan: minimal fuss, smooth passage, no unnecessary pauses. Tabloid voices chimed in almost immediately. They didn't want to be seen together, one reporter muttered near the taxi stand, trying to angle for a clean shot. But those who stood closer said there was no visible strain between them, no coldness, just a careful dance of distance. The restraint made everything feel more intense, as if the silence itself was the headline. Some bystanders insisted the whole thing was a pure coincidence. Others pointed to their history of working together and the long-standing curiosity about their bond as the reason a simple overlap could turn into a spark. Within a short span, they were both outside, each heading to a separate vehicle. The clips circulating online were quickly met with comments like "adorably coincidental" and "typical airport chaos," while a few fans speculated that there was something more deliberate in play. Industry insiders suggested that this tiny ripple of an encounter would roll through the gossip cycle for days, because even when nothing is said out loud, sometimes the quiet parts are the ones that won't let go. The whole scene carried the tension of a short film. Between the staccato of trolley wheels and the ripple of boarding calls, they seemed to melt into the crowd without missing a beat. Attention can be a stubborn thing, though. It lingers where it shouldn't, especially when two people with a shared past navigate the same space while choosing different doors. Erkan's hand stayed steady on his suitcase handle, a composed half-smile touching his face like a shield. He avoided locking eyes with anyone. His stride lengthened as if he could outpace the noise building behind him, his focus narrowing on the exit arrow ahead. Hazal, with her assistant's guidance, shifted her trajectory the way a dancer adjusts mid-step, deliberately choosing an angle that reduced the chance of intersecting with the other stream. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a movement so natural it seemed to dissolve tension without ever acknowledging it. Alone, each detail was unremarkable. Together, the fragments formed a picture, the kind that feeds 1,000 captions. They didn't speak, didn't approach, yet they moved as though tethered by a line no one else could see. Observers swear there was a fleeting moment when their eyes met, little more than a second. Some called it a silent check-in. "Are you good? Are we keeping this smooth?" Others took it as proof of discomfort, a touch of stiffness when the easiest option was to look the other way. The truth is rarely that simple in a crowded terminal. It's more likely they were assessing the moment, aware of how quickly one snapshot can explode into a story that doesn't belong to them anymore. The crowd thickened, a tide of feet and voices. A couple of blurry frames made their way online, Erkan turning slightly as if to let a child pass, Hazal pausing at the threshold where glass turned into daylight. Comments flooded in. "They're clearly avoiding each other," wrote one viewer. "They just landed at the same time." "Stop reading into it," shot back another. That gentle tug-of-war between interpretation and denial is where this kind of moment lives. The calm on their faces read like a practiced stillness, and yet the watchfulness hovered there too, unmistakable to anyone who knows what it looks like when public and private lives run on a delicate parallel. At the car line, their movements echoed the same careful rhythm. Erkan scanned the immediate area, not anxiously, but with a measured awareness. Before pulling open his door, he managed a small wave toward a cluster of photographers, the brief smile working like a closing curtain. A few meters away, Hazal maintained her pace without turning back, her assistant keeping the path clear as they approached a waiting vehicle. The doors opened and closed, engines hummed to life, and just like that, the scene ended without ever tipping into chaos. And yet the atmosphere didn't settle right away. It glowed with that charged aftertaste of something nearly said. For Erkan and Hazal, it looked like nothing more than a neat maneuver to bypass the crush of attention, an attempt to keep a private peace in a public space. But for those who chase meaning in half-glances and synchronized steps, the quiet felt worthy of analysis. Reporters replayed the clips, fans dissected hand positions and shoe choices, and strangers told each other they were sure they'd seen a nod, a smile, a sign. Time seemed to bend a little in those final moments before they disappeared behind tinted windows. Erkan slowed as he reached his vehicle, the drag of the suitcase wheels crisp enough in the echoing space to feel like a metronome. His expression was focused, but the edges softened when he glanced back, not at anyone in particular, just a broad sweep, the way a person measures a scene to make sure it won't burst into flames behind them. Hazal glided past a set of glass panels that caught the afternoon light and turned it to silk along her hair. She didn't break her line, she didn't need to. Her assistant murmured something that made her nod, and whatever tension was there slipped into the cadence of her steps. At first, most travelers missed what was happening beyond the usual bustle. Then a few noticed that the timing of their movements had a strange, quiet harmony. They kept a clear distance, never violating public space or courtesy, and yet each of their movements seemed to echo the others. The resemblance was uncanny, his pause matched her acceleration, her turn answered his shift. The conversation was wordless, a set of small decisions that protected both of them from more questions than either wanted. Every once in a while, attention skittered their way, someone raised a phone, someone whispered their names. That was when the choreography sharpened. Erkan adjusted his path, using the cover of a luggage cart. Hazal made a gentle arc that shaded her from direct view. No panic. No scramble. Just presence and poise, like two professionals who learned a long time ago that the calmest route is often the smartest. By the time they reached the cars, the exit had turned into a story all its own. Erkan paused for a heartbeat, reading the space like a script, then stepped in with quiet decisiveness. Hazal moved in a line so clean it seemed rehearsed, and yet nothing about her felt artificial, it was simply grace with a purpose. That careful, near-silent departure turned a routine airport exit into a sequence people won't stop thinking about. The smallness of it only added to the intrigue, because when big moments shout, it's the subtle ones that make people lean closer. For those who followed their early on-screen magic and the whispers that persisted after, this chance overlap felt charged. Not with drama, but with history. They've always carried an image of professionalism, the kind that doesn't spill into theatrics, and that's what made today so compelling. Even in their restraint, you could sense the echo of what audiences remember, two people who know each other's rhythms well enough to avoid stepping on the other's toes when it counts. Once the cars pulled away, the conversation didn't stop, it shifted to the glow of screens and the rhythms of timelines. Fans posted frame-by-frame breakdowns, filtering every angle and guessing at their moods. Some predicted that magazines would ride this wave for the week ahead, others brushed it off as a sweet slice of coincidence that only looks dramatic when seen through a lens. The truth probably lives somewhere in the middle. A real-life moment with real people, amplified by attention that never quite runs out. The memory of it lingered for those who stood nearby, the way a line from a movie can haunt your day even if you don't remember the exact words. There was no confrontation, no grand reunion. Just two figures in motion, aligned enough to keep the peace while staying apart. The elegance of their choices turned the terminal into a stage without a stage, a scene that might replay in the minds of strangers long after the planes had taken off again. Think about the precision it takes to move like that in a public place, to weigh each decision against a dozen possibilities, to softly calibrate your speed, your route, your reactions, all while pretending it's the most normal thing in the world. That's what they did today. Erkan's quiet warmth carried him forward without inviting a crowd. Hazal's self-possession gave her the lift she needed to pass through without creating a spark. When they were finally gone, the noise returned to its usual texture, but the space they left behind held a glimmer of something finished but not resolved. Call it a silent thriller if you want. It had all the elements: the near miss, the inconvenient timing, the careful play of angles, the exit routes chosen with intention. The smallest details sang, the whisper of suitcase wheels, the soft shine of the floor, the way daylight shifted against glass, sketching patterns across their path. If you were there, you would remember the oddly synchronized steps, the calm faces, the sense that both of them knew exactly where the cameras were and precisely how much they were willing to give. We reach the close of today's story with that same glimmer. If it was simply a coincidental crossing, it was a perfectly cinematic one. If it was something more discreet, a tacit decision to share space without sharing the moment, then it was executed with a kind of grace we don't see very often. Either way, the result was the same: a wave of conversation, a flicker of nostalgia, and a lasting image of two people who can navigate attention without letting it swallow them. You've been watching Turkish Spotlight Secrets. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who remembers their early days on screen. We'll keep following the whispers that matter, the scenes that say more than words ever could. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for what tomorrow's terminals, cameras, and chance overlaps might reveal.